Welcome to GPDTV. I'm your host, Graham Glover, the Public Information Officer for the Gainesville Police Department. On this episode of GPDTV, we're going to take a look at new innovations in community safety and policing that we have here at GPD. In our first segment, we're going to look at GPD's co-responder team, which consists of a sworn GPD officer and a mental health clinician from Meridian Behavioral Services. Here, you'll witness how GPD partners with this clinician to provide a different means of responding to calls for service.
Hello, I'm Victoria Young. I'm a lieutenant with the Gainesville Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the Training and Education Division. The co-responder team is a partnership between the Gainesville Police Department, City of Gainesville, and Meridian Behavioral Health Care, where we have a sworn police officer in full uniform in a marked patrol vehicle riding with a civilian master's level clinician every day. Currently, the team that we do have is out Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. However, our team is expanding. This team that we have now has been deployed since April of 2018, and we've made many strides in just that small time. The team was created as a response to a need that we saw in the community, that we had several individuals, some with mental health issues and some others that were just in crisis and or experiencing trauma, and they needed a specific type of service immediately as well as follow-up. So what our co-responder team currently does is they will respond to calls. They aren't necessarily dispatched unless requested by a citizen and or an officer. Over time, the team has become well aware that a lot of incidents can involve trauma and or crisis, and so they'll respond and be available resource for the officers on scene. They'll usually make contact with the individual, build a rapport rather quickly, and determine if the individual is connected to services or if there's a need for services. Once a referral has been made, they'll actually go back out and follow up with them to make sure that they've stayed connected with those services. A lot of times the individuals that we serve, we may come in contact multiple times, and that's simply because there are very basic needs that they need to have met that aren't met, such as a place to stay, or even transportation that makes it very difficult for them to stay connected to services. So there have been times that our co-responder team has actually given individuals rides just to an appointment to make sure that they can maintain connection with that service. So there's been a lot of kind of case management and follow-up that initially we weren't sure was going to be needed, but definitely there's a need for it in our community. Our co-responder team is truly a team. They have the benefit of riding together every day, but they're just an example of how well we work, even as an agency, with the other partners in the community that we have. So there may be a situation where the officer may need to come in and make sure that things are de-escalated to the point that we can provide assistance and services and referrals. And the clinician understands that there's a role that the officer plays. However, when the clinician steps in, our officer also understands that there's a different side to their responsibility as a law enforcement officer that they have to take at that point. And sometimes the lead in that is the clinician, even though the officer is there with a badge and a weapon. Being on the cutting edge, the Gainesville Police Department has not only been the first agency in this area to have a co-responder team in the model that we have with the officer and clinician going out together and responding to calls, but we're also taking the information that we've gained from that team in the last 2.5 years and said, hey, there's an even greater need. We're expanding our team. So what we're looking at now is bringing in more clinicians to ride with officers to respond specifically to those calls for service and being available. Additionally, there have been other agencies that have even come in and have rode with our officers because they're interested in finding out how they can start a team and garner some of the success that our team has.
I hope you enjoyed this segment on GPD's co-responder program. I'm now privileged to have with me here in the studio the first GPD officer to be assigned to the co-responder team, Corporal Shelley Postal. Shelley, what's it like to have a mental health clinician in the vehicle with you when you respond to calls getting out of the car and being part of what you do now for GPD.
Thanks, Graham. It's extremely beneficial having the mental health clinician in the car with us because our collaboration begins as soon as that call comes in. It's not when we show up at the call, it's as soon as we're getting those notes from our dispatch center telling us what the call's about. And we just begin collaborating, and as a law enforcement officer, I'm able to get that mental health insight from the clinician, and we work very closely together to ensure that there is a positive outcome for the members of our community who are in crisis when we show up.
It seems like, Corporal Postal, that this is just a wonderful example of community policing, something I know that Chief Jones and the entire department is committed to doing. As this program grows, as this program enters into a new phase here, what do you see for the future for the co-responder team? Well, how do you see it unfolding in the months and years ahead?
I think expansion is really the key word. We're already getting more boots on the ground, more teams out there responding to calls, and I just want to see more and more teams out there and eventually get 24/7 coverage.
Thank you, Corporal Postal. I want to thank you for being with us in the studio. This is a wonderful program, a new program, cutting-edge policing by the Gainesville Police Department. And I think it's safe to say this is community policing at its best. Thank you for being part of this important segment here on GPD TV.
Thanks, Graham.
Up next, we'll take a look at some of the new technology that GPD is introducing to help address and solve crime in our community, and also to keep our neighbors informed with up-to-date information. Car burglaries are the #1 crime in the city of Gainesville. GPD asks all of our neighbors to lock your doors, to keep your valuables out of sight. If your wallet, your keys, or a firearm are left in sight in your car, the chances of your car being burglarized increase exponentially. Help reduce this crime in the city of Gainesville by keeping your valuables out of sight, locking your vehicles, and taking your keys inside. With these simple steps, you can avoid becoming a victim of the #1 crime in the city of Gainesville, car burglaries. GPD would like to remind our neighbors to never drink and drive. Drinking and driving is not a victimless crime. With access to taxi services and car ride services at your fingertips, such as Uber and Lyft, you should never get behind a vehicle if you've had too much to drink. Help GPD reduce the number of traffic homicides occurring in our city. Always have a designated driver or a plan to contact a taxi or a car ride service. Welcome back to GPD TV. In this segment, we'll see how GPD is deploying drones to assist us in gathering critical and timely information for a variety of services that GPD offers our community.
Hi, my name is Mark Plord. I'm a lieutenant here at the Gainesville Police Department. Currently, I work in the Patrol Support Bureau, and one of the things we have in the Patrol Support Bureau that we're responsible for is the drone team. We initially just started with 2 drones. Currently we have 12 of them. This is the DJI Mavic Enterprise. And what's nice about this is they can fly up to about 400 feet. And I think it's going to revolutionize policing. It's kind of a force multiplier. They can take the place of several officers on the ground. They are relatively easy to use, easy to learn how to use. So we'll be using these mainly to look for elderly folks maybe that have gotten lost with it, maybe the dementia. If we have any violent felons that have escaped from us, we'll be using this for our canine officers. If they're tracking somebody, we can put this up in the air and it can kind of hover above them and see anything in front of them. And then we can relay down to the canine officer what the drone is seeing. 2 officers who actually have them in the trunk of their cars. They will be out there working patrol and handling their normal duties as a patrol officer. But one of the things they will have a drone in their trunk. So if a particular call comes out that a drone would be applicable for, they will respond to the scene and they'll be able to put the drone up. And I think our goal is every year to add a few more drones to our inventory and get them out to the officers working the road So there'll just be an extra tool that they will have in their car to use to help solve crime. Currently, the Florida state statute that governs drones is actually very restrictive for law enforcement officers. There's only certain times that we can use it. For instance, we can't just routinely put it up just for the sake of putting up the drone. We have to actually either have to have a search warrant, or there must be an exigent circumstance, such as a missing person, an escaped felon, something to that effect, a natural disaster. With us using the drones, it will help us solve a lot of crimes a lot quicker, be able to catch the bad guys a lot quicker, and hopefully find those missing relatives a lot quicker if they've wandered off. It's definitely the technology of the future.
Welcome back to GPDTV. I hope you enjoyed the recent segment on the drone program that GPD has. I'm now joined by the Patrol Support Bureau Commander, Captain Mike Schentrip. Mike, could you talk to us a little bit about the benefits of the drone program to the public here in Gainesville?
We think at the Gainesville Police Department, the drones will give us some flexibility to work and help keep the community safe, and in the meantime, help us find missing individuals and help us catch bad guys.
Captain Schentrip, you also, in your role as the commander for the Patrol Support Bureau, oversee the Community Safety and Awareness Center. Can you talk to our viewers a little bit about what this center does and how it also helps GPD combat and deal with crime here in the city of Gainesville?
If you think of a Community Safety and Awareness Center, it's almost the exact same thing as what a lot of places call a real-time crime center. We just gave it a different name because we believe that our center is going to keep the community safe, just like a real-time crime center does, but the capacity we have has been a slow process to build it out. We try to use video camera technology that's already been in place. We really see the Real-Time Crime Center or our Community Safety and Awareness Center as a force multiplier for our officers. Kind of gives them another set of eyes out there. If something is occurring, we can maybe move video cameras in a direction to kind of give them real situational awareness when they're arriving. What are they going to see when they arrive? And we're not here to surveil the community. We don't have people looking at the video cameras 24/7 a day trying to find people committing crimes. We would only use these cameras in case a crime had already occurred. I will also tell you we use no facial recognition on these cameras that are deployed in the community. We do not believe that live streaming facial recognition is anything that Gainesville Police or our community would ever want to be a part of. We also integrate our license plate reader technology, which we share with the university. Universities deployed numerous license plate readers outside the campus as part of their campus security. And I think all these things together kind of bring a capacity, not just for helping keep the community safe from criminals, but also in emergency operations, just like this tropical storm that just came through. The ability to have these cameras throughout our community can help us save lives and protect people and property. And we really hope as a group and as an organization that this is something we're going to build upon, it's scalable, and I think in the long run, the entire community is going to wrap its arms around this program, I hope, because it really has potential.
I want to thank you again, Captain Schentrip, for coming in and helping educate the Gainesville community on the drone technology and the Community Safety and Awareness Center. You've really given us some great insights into how GPD seeks to keep the Gainesville community safe and up to date on so much information that GPD does here in the community.
Well, Graham, it was an honor being here. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, and I think this show is a wonderful aspect of how we can show as an agency what a great job I hope that we're doing day to day, day in, day out.
Up next, we're going to take a look at some tips and tricks that you can do to keep your home safe and secure. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you receive a suspicious email, text message, or phone call asking for money or personal information relating to utility bills, tax bills, COVID relief money, or other similar financial matters, please contact the GPD front desk at 352-393-7500 and ask to speak to our fraud department, or visit the Federal Trade Commission website where you can file a claim. Remain vigilant and proactive so that you do not become a victim of a financial scam. GPD would like to remind our neighbors to never drink and drive. Drinking and driving is not a victimless crime. With access to taxi services and car ride services at your fingertips, such as Uber and Lyft, you should never get behind a vehicle if you've had too much to drink. Help GPD reduce the number of traffic homicides occurring in our city. Always have a designated driver or a plan to contact a taxi or a car ride service. In our final segment, GPD's Crime Prevention Coordinator Brett Trawick will highlight several things you might consider doing to better secure your home. Brett is a retired GPD officer and has countless years of experience in addressing, solving, and preventing crime in our community.
Hi folks, my name is Brett Trawick and I'm the Program Coordinator for Crime Prevention for the Gainesville Police Department. And we're here today at this normal average home to give some ideas and tips for preventing burglary from happening at your house. Starting here at the front of this house, you'll see that there are some shrubs. Now I will tell you that the rule of thumb is the 2-foot, 6-foot rule. And 2-foot, 6-foot rule is that basically anything that grows out of the ground ideally is no higher than 2 feet from the ground, and any trees or high foliage is no lower than 6 feet, so it's trimmed up. And what that does is that gives an area of 4 feet that passersby and your neighbors can glance over and see your house, and if anything suspicious is going on, they'll be able to see that. And that's called natural surveillance. Now these shrubs are a little higher than what is ideal, but they still do not block the window, so if somebody was working trying to open the window or pulling a screen off, somebody driving by or a neighbor would probably be able to see that. Now if we walk around to the front of this house, I'd like to point out how the homeowner has kept the front plantings in this area ideal. They're down below the window height so that there's nothing covering the window. Should somebody want to try to get the screen off and open the window, anybody passing by would glance over and be able to see him standing here in front of the window. Now on this side of the house, you'll see that we have a shrub that's a little overgrown and is obviously covering the window as well as the one next to it, so that somebody walking by on the street wouldn't be able to look back here and obviously see somebody if they were looking in the window or trying to get the window open. Now as you move further over here to the front door, you'll notice that there's an outer door and of course the inner door. The advantage to this outer door is while it is not real secure, it does have a small deadbolt here on the inside. So if you wanted extra light during the day while you're inside doing things, and had the main door open, you could still put the little deadbolt on and nobody could just walk in on you through this door. The front door of the house is pretty typical, and it has a lower knob with a lock, and then it also has a deadbolt as well. Now you always want all your exterior house doors to have a deadbolt with at least a 3-inch throw into the frame, and then also you want to make sure that the screws go fully into the door frame that hold the small little square of metal the deadbolt goes into. Also on the front door, you'll see that they have a peephole. That's very important. All exterior doors in a house should have a peephole so that you can look out before you open the door. Now ideally, you may want to add a peephole based on who lives in the house or who visits on a regular basis. If somebody's a little shorter or you have children, you want them to have a peephole they feel comfortable looking out as well. Also, this house is equipped with the Ring doorbell. It's just one of many different kinds of doorbells like this that help you monitor your house as well as the neighborhood. The advantage is with the Ring, you can monitor it whether you're down the street at a friend's house or a neighbor's house visiting for a while, or at the office across town, or even in another state on vacation. When something happens in the front of your house, you'll be able to monitor that and see what's going on. As well, many times when something happens down the street or a neighborhood incident occurs, you can help law enforcement and other people find out what was going on by the video that comes from your doorbell as to vehicles that were in the area that were suspicious or people walking by your house even if they went down the street to commit a crime somewhere else. Now let's move on to lighting. Studies have shown that the #1 deterrent for preventing criminal activity is lighting, especially at night. This homeowner has gone an extra mile with his lighting and added a motion sensor that controls all the lights in the front. Now this motion sensor is also able to be tied into your home computer and your home security system through your phone, a smartphone, and you can control the lighting from a remote location. If you forget to turn the outside lights on, if you decide to stay overnight at the beach because you've gone over there for the day, whatever the issue is, you can do that. Or have a normal motion sensor. Now this motion sensor controls all the floodlights here in front of the house. And of course you can also purchase the kind of floodlight setup that has the 2 floodlights and the individual motion sensor. Now at the front of this house, you'll see there's a garage door, single car garage. Many houses here in Gainesville have enclosed garages, and as is ideal, the garage door is closed. If you're not in your garage, if you're not out front doing yard work or something like that where you can monitor what's going on near the garage door, it's ideal to have it closed. And that's so that once again, somebody can't just walk in 90 seconds, pick out a bike or a lawnmower or a trimmer or a blower and be gone before you realize what's happened. And now we'll talk a little bit about fencing and privacy for your residents. Here in this homeowner's backyard, we have basically 3 types of fence that kind of cover the gamut of what's available. Over here you have a wood fence, 6 foot tall, your typical privacy fence, but it's semi-opaque. You can see through it a little bit through the slats. So if something was going on over there, you can't see exactly what's going on. But if something suspicious were to come up, you could be able to see over enough to maybe call into the law enforcement agency of your area and let them know that something odd is going on and keep them updated a little bit. Of course, right here behind me is the 6 foot board-on-board total privacy fence that you can't see through at all. That's fine also, but it doesn't allow your neighbor to be able to see if there's a noise in your backyard easily or something like that. Then over here on the other side is the good old chain link fence. It's 4 feet high, and it allows you to be able to look across, but it also delineates the line between your yard and the neighbors, and it's good for pets and things like that. The main thing about fencing is it definitely lays down a boundary as to what is the private area of your residence for people that are passing by. They can't really claim that they didn't know that your backyard was a private area if it's fenced and the gate is closed. Now we'll take a minute while we're here in the backyard. I want to point out this pineapple plant. And as you notice, the leaves have some nice serrations and some very unpleasant points on them. This is a perfect example of what is called hostile vegetation. But this is the kind of vegetation you would want to plant in an area that had people constantly cutting through your yard. It's also the kind of vegetation, there's several different ones, that is good for planting under windows. It prevents people from wanting to get close to the window and look into it. And as you can see, it's also not a real high bush. It stays down about waist high. So once again, funniest term of the day is hostile vegetation, and this is a perfect example of it. And of course, one thing about living in north central Florida is the great recreation and the beautiful lakes and waterways that we have, and the ability to have boats and RVs. Now, if the boat is parked in front of your house, it's ideal when you're not using it to have your tongue secured with a lock of some sort. Close the lock on the tongue and then put the lock in here, and that just prevents somebody from being able to back up in your driveway once again in about 90 seconds, put your boat on the back of their hitch and drive away with it. And then when you come home from work, you're out of a boat or a RV or a travel trailer. And one final thing about home security that interlocks with personal security is that of identity theft and people getting too much information that they don't need about you. Most people do all their business through their private home. They have a home office or something like that. All your bills come to your house, and after you pay those bills, usually there's a statement left. Well, a lot of your medical bills and your financial statements and everything that comes from the bank and other sources is not ideal to be left in the trash can. My suggestion is to go buy a shredder. You can buy a simple shredder and have it there in your home office or the desk where you do your home office work. And then when you're done with those bills, take those bills with your name and your address and all that kind of stuff and just drop it through the shredder and shred it. All right, well, that about wraps it up for today, and I appreciate your time. I just want to remind you that our best assistant is a good citizen that's observant and calls in things that they think are suspicious. Most people have lived in their neighborhoods for a long time and they get an idea what their neighbors do and the vehicles that come and go. And if you see something that just doesn't look right or feel right, please give us a call. If you think it's an emergency, call 911. But if you don't think it's an emergency, if you just have some information, the communication center is 955-1818.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of GPD TV. If there's an issue that you would like to see us address, please contact the Public Information Office or reach out to us on any of our social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Remember, we work for you, the City of Gainesville.